today's episode of Vice Versa, we're talking about GM's Hummer SUV EV and its range, Tim Cook commenting on Elon, Tesla, and the Apple car, the US EV tax credit coming back, and a whole bunch of GM news. And as usual, for the second time, our first time didn't quite work, but as usual, I'm joined by Ricky Roy. How you doing, Ricky?
Good, Matt. Good. Honestly, 21 live streams. I think this is the first time we've ever had any issues. But yeah, so anybody who was on the part of the last stream, hopefully you've moved over and let's do this thing. How was your week? What did you talk about this week on your channel?
This week I talked about, is the renewable energy transition just kind of like a big lie? Is it actually going to happen? Is it a sure thing? Kind of explored looking at history, going back in time and looking at past industrial revolutions and how it applies to today to kind of figure out where things are going.
Gotcha. So I was not able to finish my video this week, so we're going to take a week off and hopefully reach that elusive dream of having a backlog of videos. And so nothing this week. Our Starship video is still our last video, and we'll get back to it next week.
Yeah, and if anybody hasn't watched the Starship video, go watch it. It's fantastic.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that was a fun one. So let's jump right into it and get started and talk about, the title and the thumbnail of this live stream was the EV pickup wars are heating up. This is the 2024 GMC Hummer EV. This is the SUV form, and it's slated to have a 300-mile range. And in the first edition trim level, it's going to be around $110,000. So first thing I'll say, looking at the truck, it looks a lot like the Hummer H3, which wasn't my favorite design. It has a really high belt line. So, I think that's going to kind of be a personal preference thing. But yeah, the interesting thing here is typically most EV companies go with a really aerodynamic car in the interest of getting as much range as possible without having to have as many batteries. They're not too worried about that because these cars are going to have a 170 the article says kilowatt, but I think they have kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
But either a 170 or a 200 kilowatt hour battery pack. So that means, yeah, we're talking like 3 times the size of the battery pack in our Model 3s, and it will take 3 times as much energy apparently because it'll get a similar 300 miles of range. So interesting move, but they're not planning to sell a lot of these probably, and they're very expensive. So they're still going for that kind of flagship segment, and I think it could be a pretty bold move. This is their platform, and the Ultium battery will be at the heart of this. We mentioned in a previous episode that the Chevy Bolt will be the last of the old way of doing things, and going forward, this is going to be their in-house Ultium pack, and we'll talk more about that in another story as well. This, I think, is the double stack configuration.
Yeah.
It's too tall. So this is like full, this is the full enchilada. This is everything. This is as much batteries as they can possibly stack. And,
it's 2 battery packs stacked on top of each other, which is insane.
Yeah, you can kind of see it in this picture a little bit actually, but... And to remind everybody that it has that crab walk mode, which is 4-wheel steering, and all wheels can turn in one direction. The car can kind of do that crab walking move, which is cool. Here's the inside of the truck. Notice here there's a big old honking gear shifter, which we will talk about with Tesla's decision to go very much the other way on this decision. But cool truck. I think it's going to appeal to people who like that kind of military, industrial, big honking kind of look. Let's say the not minimalist. And I think it's going to be a pretty successful truck. The sister story to this is that they've also announced that they're building an electric Chevy Silverado that has 400 miles of range. So, if they're going to have a similar 200 kilowatt battery pack, they might have been able to get the drag down a little bit. But this is not actually what it'll look like. This is the gas Silverado. And, I don't think it'll look like this because if you're doing a clean sheet design, there's no reason why you have to have some of these kind of considerations. This is very much a body-on-frame truck. It has a big gas engine in the front. It has huge grills, which are horrible for aerodynamics, but I think truck lovers do love. But a lot of this kind of goes away when you have an EV. So I'll be very curious to see how it actually ends up looking. And details are a little bit scarce on that front, and it's very similar actually to my mind as the Ford F-150 EV that we keep hearing about, because the pictures of it all seem to make it look like very much a traditional Ford F-150. But if it's going to be an EV and it's all new and it's a clean sheet design, does it have to look like that? Might they change it? Which gets into a funny conundrum that these companies are going to find themselves in, which is, do you build a very traditional truck for people who like trucks, Or do you build an EV for the cool, early adopters? I don't know. I'm actually really torn on that. What do you think?
One of the things I want to call out on the Silverado is they are designing this from the ground up. It's not going to be a retrofit of a Silverado. So it's not like they're doing some kind of weird hybrid where they're taking a gas car and shoving a battery in it. It's going to be
Good.
from the ground up as an EV, which I think is very important and also shows that GM is looking to the future in the right way and they're handling this the right way. I am insanely curious to see where they're going to land. I personally think that they're going to end up with something that's kind of like a fake grill or something kind of look, because I think they're going to go after the traditional truck owner that wants something that looks and feels like a truck. For me, the big clue is just look at the Hummer. I mean, that's the Hummer EV. It also looks like a big gas guzzler of a of a truck. So it's interesting to me, especially for this one, for the Hummer, is that when those were big 20 years ago, like very popular, it was just, these big gas guzzlers pumping out like horrible miles per gallon, just absolutely abysmal. And just for that reason alone, I couldn't stand them. But for some reason, I'm kind of giving them a pass that they have this double stacked battery that's just, it's still an excessive car. It's like, it's ridiculous that they're doing it this way again. But it's a little more forgivable to me because it is environmentally more sound because it's not pumping out CO2. But it is taking up an absurd number of batteries just to make it go 300 miles, which is, I'm surprised that they say it's going to be a base price of, I think it's $80,000.
Yeah, that'll be a couple years down the road for the,
Yeah.
for the limited edition trimmer, the smaller feature set.
Yeah, but I think GM's going to be going after more of the traditional, I'm a truck guy look and feel for all their products.
I think so too. If you think about what Tesla's done, they've gone after like nerds with ludicrous mode
Yes.
and plaid, right? These are
Yeah.
the Spaceball references and stuff. I'm not sure how many like Hummer drivers were fans of Spaceballs. So their launch mode or their ludicrous mode, if you will, is called Watts to Freedom (WTF), which is
Yes.
fun, right? First of all, like kudos for being fun and having some fun with it. And Watts to Freedom sounds like very much a truck buyer, like somebody who's not watching Star Wars and Star Trek. They're
Sounds like Go America.
Go America, exactly. And that's fine. I think that's cool.
Yeah.
One thing that they're doing is they're poisoning themselves to be different. They're not really overlapping with Tesla, which companies that have done that have gotten a lot of hate. We were talking about this before the show. Lucid gets a lot of hate because they're directly in alignment with what Tesla's doing, whereas like Rivian doesn't get that level of hate. And this is also kind of going after a completely different clientele, let's just say.
Yes.
My concern, though, is to your point about eco-friendly. Sure, it's electric, so it's eco-friendly. But like you said, you need 3 times as much electricity to go as far as you do on a Model Y, for example. So still, a little bit worrisome there. And also, if you're going to make an $80,000 truck, well, it has to go at least, 200 miles? 250? Like, what's the minimum floor? 250?
Yeah, I would say 250.
So that means you need 170 kilowatt hours of battery pack in it, which is not going to be cheap. And so, I mean, I wonder about the economics of how profitable it'll be at that point. Anyway, there's some things I think that they got to work out, but at least they're making it. And I'm excited that the EV pickup wars are heating up.
They're definitely heating up. It's like we're going to see a lot of really cool pickups showing up over the next year or two, which is something I'm very excited about.
All right, I can't take credit for this one, but I agree with James Paul. He says the Hummer launch mode should be get on the chopper. I can't do a good Arnold Schwarzenegger impersonation, but I agree. That would be fantastic.
Yes. I love that. Ready for the next story?
Yeah.
All right. So next up is Tim Cook did an interview with Kara Swisher this past week where she asked him point blank about how Elon said he had reached out to Apple and Tim Cook for a meeting to potentially sell Tesla to Apple back when they were struggling. And he never took the call or never agreed to the meeting. She asked him point blank about that. And what I found very funny is Tim Cook is a very, how should I put this? A very diplomatic man, the way he answers things. And he was very dodgy about it. But what he did say was, I've never spoken to Elon, although I have a great admiration and respect for the company he's built. I think Tesla has done an unbelievable job of not only establishing the lead and keeping the lead for such a long time, a period of time in the EV space. So I have a great appreciation for them. It's a wonderful accolade. He's giving Tesla, but he never answered the question. He didn't say, yeah, no, I didn't take that call. So I thought it was a very diplomatic way of putting it, of like, I admire him, I admire what they're doing, congrats, but yeah, I'm not going to answer that question. It was a nice deflection. But the thing in that interview that really jumped out at me as the most important part was when she was asking him about the Apple car, which of course he did not answer. He did talk about autonomy, and he made a quote. There was a quote from what he said about that, which is, the autonomy itself is a core technology in my view. If you sort of step back, the car in a lot of ways is a robot. An autonomous car is just a robot. And so there are lots of things you can do with autonomy, and we'll see what Apple does. We investigate so many things internally, many of them never see the light of day. I'm not saying that that one will not. There's so much smoke and around this. There's got to be a fire. We all know that Apple's working on either a car or autonomy or both or something. And that one quote from him makes it pretty clear that Apple is probably doing a lot of autonomous exploration right now. And they've been doing it probably for years, because you know how they were supposedly building a car, then some of the car was put on hold, and now the car might be coming back. That entire time, I don't think they've ever stopped working on autonomy. So it's going to be really interesting to see if they end up, like, what kind of product are they going to put out? Are they going to actually come out with a car, or are they going to put out a system that can be part of somebody else's car? And it's like, I'm really curious to see which path they go down and if they actually do execute on this. Because if there's one company I think could kind of go from 0 to 60 in no time flat, it's Apple, because they just have such deep pockets. They could just pour gobs of money into this if they really believe it's a good product and a good direction for them to go in. What's your take on this?
Yeah, the question, like the deflection, I don't buy it for a second. His answer for the Tesla, I respect what they're doing. It's just, to me, it just screams like total BS. I do think that's exactly how it happened. I think, it's one of those things when you're not looking for something, you wouldn't see opportunity if it was standing in front of you. That's probably what it was kind of like. A couple of years ago, Apple was still thinking, oh, we're going to sell iPhones, we're going to sell iPads, and we're going to do all this stuff. But I think now it's a very different situation. They're starting to feel that, the sales are declining now, because there's only so many human beings in the world who are going to buy an iPhone, and most of them already have one at this point. So if Apple is going to go from 1 point whatever trillion where they are now, if they're going to move into the next 10 years, what are they going to make, or what are they going to do? Services are good. They have a lot of good inroads on services. A self-driving car sounds pretty lucrative. Talk about like doubling your valuation if you could figure that out. My challenges there, though, are they're very much a hardware and software company, like you said. Are they going to really sell this as something to other companies, which is more the Google move? I'm not sure they are. But at the same time, you mentioned if anyone can figure this out, it's Apple. But I mean, like, real hardcore engineering is not really an Apple strength. Like, finding ways to like billet a block of aluminum into a beautiful MacBook is engineering for sure, but it's far from like suspension and damper design or like chassis design and stuff. So, and also they don't have their own factories, they outsource that sort of stuff. So I'm not sure that they're that well poised for this, and that might be why they're continuously going back and forth on this. We have a Project Titan. Now we don't. We're firing everybody. We do. We don't. They're struggling with this in a way that they didn't struggle with like iPad or iPhone or Apple Watch. And I think it's because I hate to admit it, or they might hate to admit it, but I think they're lacking the core competency to do this properly, which means if they're going to become a licensed play, that's kind of unlike what they do. Do they really want to do that? I'm torn. I really don't know how Apple's going to factor in. I almost think they should buy a company. I mentioned this before. Just buy Lucid. They should have bought Lucid, like, absolutely. It's very Apple looking. Buy a company like that and just get a jump on it and start to integrate or do something.
That's not Apple's way, though. It's like the fact that they didn't buy Tesla, I don't think is a reflection on them not being interested in the space, but they never do big splashy acquisitions. They never have. Never. It's always been
Siri, right?
Small, tiny company. They buy lots of little companies that are either acqui-hires or bring little technology stacks in that then they can make their own. They never just buy a company wholesale. If they bought Tesla, they're buying a company wholesale that's not really their own. It's very rare. Like when they did Beats, that was really unusual when they bought Beats.
Yeah,
it's like, I just don't think they'd go down the path of buying a Lucid or a Tesla, which is probably why they didn't take the call. But I'm not convinced about the engineering side, because they do have a lot of car people that are working for them. And that's the same thing that people said about Tesla when they were starting. Of like, oh, Tesla's not doing it the way, Big Auto's done it for 20 years. They don't know what they're
But didn't
doing.
they have a lot of layoffs as well? Like they're waxing and waning. Like I don't know that they know.
That's not what
they
I've read. It's
Okay.
more of the project, from what I've heard, never stopped. But what changed was that they changed course because they were going down this path of building out their own car. And that's where they were kind of like, well, we don't know if we want to do that yet because we have to solve the autonomy first. And so they kind of went back to square one to reevaluate their autonomy to see if there's something there before they went back into the car itself again. I think the biggest question for them is, if they're going to make a car, who's going to build it? And all the rumors about Hyundai and Kia and all that stuff. It's like, if they can't figure that out, I don't think this is ever going to happen. But I think the autonomy side, the software side, I think they can figure that out.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, and they're Apple. They have a premium image to maintain.
Yeah.
So you can't just put out some kind of product.
Yeah.
I was laughing because Dan says Apple Car would sell for $200,000. Yeah.
Well, no joke. What they were building before, what the rumors were, is that's what exactly had happened. The car that they had designed with the battery and all the technology, it was like going to be a $250,000 car. And that's when basically Tim Cook came in and said, whoa, slow down, guys. This ain't going to fly.
Right.
And that's why they kind of did a reset. So it's not that they were waffling of, do we want to do this or not? It was more of like, how are we going to do this? And so that's kind of why they went back to square one. So I don't think they've ever kind of necessarily lost their way, but I think from the outside, because they're so secretive, it's like we're only getting glimpses and like we don't know the full story. And so I'm just insanely interested to hear what the full story is if and when they finally do release a product. It's like, I'm just curious. It's not necessarily that I'd be wanting to buy an Apple car, but like, I'm just curious. What are they going to do?
This might be my favorite comment so far. It is my favorite comment of the day. Benjamin Barr says, Apple is used to redefining an industry, but Tesla already did.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly why they're kind of lost in the sauce. They're like, we're gonna go in, we're gonna make the iPhone. It's gonna be, oh no, Tesla's already done all that. Okay, well, we'll make it different in this way, and we'll hire these guys, and then no, they're. So I think they're kind of they're struggling. They were used to being the sole innovators in their industry, if you will. I mean, that's not true, but I think they're kind of waffling with the fact that Tesla's got a pretty strong lead in every regard, including autonomy, including UI of all the stuff that you think Apple would do. Like Tesla's screen and UI is second to none.
Yep.
So they don't really have. Yeah, this is a good story. I think we got to touch on this more in the future, but let's see what the future holds. Apple is such a secretive company that it's almost impossible to know what they're going to do until they do it.
Exactly. They like it that way. I don't. I wish I knew what they were doing, but we'll just have to wait.
Yeah. So the next story is about Tesla. You might have heard of them. And speaking of secrecy and stuff, I will say, because Apple doesn't manufacture anything themselves, they have like factories to do that. Their secrecy days are over. Everything leaks. Like, name one Apple product that wasn't completely known about, right?
Yeah, no. Yep.
In contrast, a company that is massive, that never leaks, you never hear anything about? Tesla. Think about that, right? Cybertruck and this Model S refresh, we didn't know anything about this until it was going to happen. So this story is about the refreshed Model S and how it's shifting from how it shifts from drive to reverse. So I pointed out the Hummer had a very traditional shifter in the center where your hand kind of rests on the armrest. This car not only doesn't have that here, it has nothing here. Our Model 3s have a little shifting stock, which I really like right there. This car forgoes even that, and instead, this is the only way you can change gears is on the screen, okay? I can't wait to get your take on this as a UX designer. So you shift on the screen, okay? Or if, if the car figures everything out, it figures out your context of what you're trying to do. For example, you're in your garage and there's a washing machine in front of you. It knows you're going to back out because the garage door is open and there's more space. The radars say there's more room behind you than in front of you. You're in a parking spot, for example, or something, or you're pulling out of a parking spot face forward and you can just go into drive and go forward. It'll figure that out. So based on the context of what you're doing, it'll just do the right thing, which sounds kind of crazy to me.
Yes.
Am I wrong? What do you think? What do you make of this?
I think this is just bananas is the best word I can think of. It's completely insane to me that they're doing this. I appreciate that they're looking ahead to the full self-driving future, but as we've talked about before, that's still years away. It's like, I don't understand why they're pushing it so hard. It's like, just put a stalk on the steering wheel. It's like you can, and then when you have full self-driving and it's proven itself, then just take the stalk off. It's like, I don't understand why they're trying to be so out in advance. However, what they came up with for the solution of the screen, I think is actually pretty, for what they're doing, very smart, because it looks like you don't have to be super precise. You just swipe your finger down the side. So it's like, I think when you probably get used to it and you're driving, you can probably just reach out without even really paying attention to where you're touching, because you just touch the side of the screen and swipe up or down, depending on whether you're going to go forward or back. So I think it should become second nature, but there's that period of just kind of like weirdness in the beginning. So for me, from a UI point of view, I wish they hadn't done this. I think they're pushing the envelope too far. This is actually making things worse in the short term for the idea that they'll get there in the long term. But you're kind of, it's like they're placing a bet that they're going to do this really quick. They're going to get this full self-driving thing licked, where this auto forward and reverse thing is going to work reliably 100% of the time. I don't think that's going to work 100% of the time right out of the gate. So it's like, how long is that going to be? Is it going to be 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years before that really feels good? The problem with that is, think about any voice assistant, you know, Siri, Alexa, pick your voice assistant. How many people say a command and it doesn't work, and then the next day they try it again, it doesn't work, and they're like, forget this, I'm not going to use this. This thing is garbage. And then you just stop trying to use it. That's like Siri all over. And the problem I have with this is, if it's a bad user experience for 6 months, a year, it's going to get a bad reputation, and it's going to turn people off. I just wish they weren't pushing the envelope so hard on this specific thing.
Yeah. So Tim Leek says, I agree. Sounds like someone will end up through their garage wall at some point.
Yes.
I can picture the CNN article now. They'll be sure to cover that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So my problem with this is what their previous solution, what we have in our cars, is fantastic. It doesn't get in the way of anything, right? I was looking at, like, if you look at cars like that Hummer picture that we had, a lot of cars still put this huge, massive, space-consuming shifting mechanism, which is moronic. You spend about 8 seconds shifting a day, ever. Like, nobody thinks about it after that. Once you've done that part and you're done with it, you don't even need it anymore. So why take up your entire center console? What Tesla's done, far better. They have drink holders, and they have a huge center console. They have an arm tray, like storage up and down that area, and there's nothing in the way. So I would say, like, if you were giving up that to go for this, I'd get it. But the stock that they have now on the wheel is tiny, and it doesn't get in the way of anything. If they had just left that alone, I don't think you lose anything. The reason why I mention this is because I'm not a fan of this screen control, and the reason why is, and tell me if it's just me in my car. If it is, I'll take it to Tesla. If you're like watching Netflix, for example, right? I'm at a supercharger, and my son's got to watch his shows on Netflix if we're supercharging. So if Netflix is running, and then I finish charging, I take it out, I'm ready to go, and I can just put it into reverse or drive, and then the screen it turns black for like 15 seconds, and then eventually the reverse camera turns on. Are you telling me now I have to sit there and exit, because Netflix is full screen? You can't take any other input. You can't shift gears in Netflix. So you hit the X. Their MCU computer is still a little underpowered. I think their next MCU computer upgrade will be really good, like Apple, like iPad feeling, but like it's a little bit clunky. Like you hit the X, it takes some time to shut down. Sometimes the backup camera takes 5-7 seconds, right? You want to sit there for 5 or 7 seconds to, but of course that does assume that the self-shifting doesn't just work brilliantly and it knows exactly what to do, which it very well might, right? I mean, maybe we're thinking about this too much. I will say I have some reservations, but and the cars have been delayed, and who knows why. They're not using the new batteries or anything, so there are some delays. There could be stuff like this they're working out, but when we get our hands on it, I guess we'll know better. But weird choices, I think, and cool though. I mean, they're always pushing the envelope. I can appreciate that.
I struggle with the UI sometimes. I don't know if you have this problem trying to bring out the trip meter, like to see, like, I've driven 80 miles over the past hour and a half or whatever it is. Yeah, I sometimes will go down there and try to swipe it, and then it spins the 3D view of the road. Yep. Constantly. And it's like, where am I supposed to touch? How am I supposed to, where am I, is it, the magic spot's right there? No, it's not right there. I just spun the thing again. That's what I was talking about with the Siri analogy. It's like, it's gotten to the point where it's like, I just don't even try to get to the trip meter anymore. Cause it's like, when you're driving and the delicacy of that touch is very frustrating. And so hopefully this swiping is like you were saying, if you're watching Netflix, whatever's going on the screen, that area should always be, do what it's supposed to do. So if you're sitting there watching Netflix, you should be able to swipe on top of the movie and still have it do its thing.
So a viewer from one of my videos mentioned, I think the MCU computer is still running an x86 architecture, like an Intel Atom or something. And I think they're moving to an AMD product. So the next iteration, the next time they upgrade this thing, they got to go like ARM, and they have to like really optimize it. Because I think the MCU controls are better than any car. Like, let's not, kid ourselves. But it's not iPad good yet. It's not like the touch response and the touch reactivity isn't iPad level. So there's still some room to improve. And at the same time, though, like, let's give them credit. Like, all the volume controls, you just click and drag. It's so obvious. It's just such a nice, pleasant experience. But what they need to have is multitasking. Because the minute you go to Netflix, it's like whatever activity or whatever was running before is all like terminated. And now you're in this new instance of this big full screen app. And when you hit X, it takes time to get back. Whereas like on iPad, every app is just in a container and you can open them and close them, and there's enough RAM for all of it and enough compute power to run it all. So I think that's kind of the fundamental issue. Also, if you run Sentry mode, it drains the battery ridiculously a lot. And part of it is I think that chipset, whatever it's running with all the ancillary systems and hard drives, it uses like a couple hundred watts. It must, because you lose a couple of miles of range per couple of hours. So it's a decent amount of draw. And if you went to an ARM system that was far more optimized and far lower power consumption, I think there's some improvement. So my prediction is the next MCU upgrade, they might look into that and rewrite their code and recompile it for an ARM architecture.
Yeah, but you're
All
right.
That was a long one.
Yeah.
but
So
I'll stop.
Going to the next story, which is the electric car incentive might be coming back from the Biden plan that they're rolling out right now. So this is part of the planned $174 billion investment into electrification, and it's going to replace the current $7,500 tax credit for the first 200,000 cars per manufacturer, which we all know Tesla no longer has. It's going to be rolled out supposedly for all American-made EVs, and it will be up to $10,000, and it will be some kind of combination of tax credit and local rebates, is what I was reading about. And there'll be a new phase out where it will be an additional 400,000 cars per manufacturer, which means if this goes into effect, Tesla could theoretically have 400,000 more cars that could have a $10,000 rebate on it, which suddenly takes their Model 3 and puts it squarely into like the low 30s, maybe even upper 20s for cost, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. But there's also a separate bill that's in the Senate, which is for a different style of credit, which is a 10-year period for the incentive, which I'm curious to get your take on this, because there's different ways to look at this. It's like, what are you trying to incentivize? There's the adding 400,000 cars per manufacturer for US made cars, $10,000 off. And then this other bill is like, it could be up to 10 years, and there might be like a slow phase out period over that 10 years. What are you trying to incentivize? It feels like these need some kind of caps on it, because it's like, no offense to people who want to buy a $100,000 car, but you don't need a $10,000 rebate. It doesn't incentivize car companies to make the most affordable cars they can make at that rate. Where if you say the cars have to be under $40,000 or $50,000 to qualify for the rebate, it's going to incentivize these companies to try to make the most affordable cars they can make the Toyota Camrys of the EV world, and those will be the ones that get the rebates to get it into the hands of the mass market. So I'm curious, what do you think about these incentive programs?
You make a good point. I thought about this while we put it on the board. So first of all, what's really scary is, Tesla's never had like a record Q1 before, and they just did. We didn't even talk about this because there's a lot of coverage. There's probably 10 million videos on YouTube, and I'm sure everybody's already seen that. But Tesla's killing it. Like, they are selling cars in Q1, which is notoriously a horrible quarter for buying cars. You're broke from Christmas and
without
you're full
rebates
from Thanksgiving.
They don't even have a rebate.
Right. And they don't even have rebates, right?
Yeah.
So they're right. 186, whatever it was, 1,000 cars in Q1 without rebates. So what happens now when a standard range plus Model 3 is, what is it, $30,000 after rebate?
Yeah.
The scary thing with doing this, and the crazy thing is, now who's buying the Bolt? The reason for the Bolt was for like $31,000, you got this really cool, scrappy little EV. It wasn't the best looking, didn't have that cool UI or all that kind of stuff, but it was a solid choice. So in a way, I think it'll hurt some of the other people short term, because Tesla's take $7,000 off every Tesla. That's going to be kind of brutal. Like if you were trying to compete with the Model Y before and you're the Mach-E, what just happened to you? I kind of like it at the same time because I want my Cybertruck.
I know.
And why not save $7,000? And to your point, though, like if you're buying these really expensive cars, do you really need it? I will say this, though, Maddie, you mentioned about they should all phase out. Like they shouldn't just be around in perpetuity. There should be some sort of a cap. I actually think, minus Tesla, I think Tesla really probably should just do without the incentives. Just prove to be independent. Like, Elon's a libertarian. He doesn't, go the libertarian route and just sell cars properly. But if you're General Motors or Ford, here's my concern with the 200,000 or 400,000. Real quickly, Mark Lawrence, thank you so much for the super chat. We will get to your comment as soon as I finish this ramble. If you're Ford or GM and you're selling gas cars and electric cars and you have a $200,000 cap, like Q1, the Bolt EUV comes out. Oh, we had a great quarter. We sold a bunch of Bolt EUVs. Oh, and then we hit the cap and the prices went up. No one's buying them, and screw that, we're going back to buying gas cars. If you could leave that in place for some time, and like right now by having a cap, you're disincentivizing being good.
Yeah.
Like if you're crummy at this, like, I think Honda has this electric Clarity no one cares about because it's not a good car. If you're bad at this, you never hit the cap and you benefit from it. But if you're good at this, like GM is also past the point of rebate.
Yep. Then
you're kind of disincentivizing it. What if you made it like flat for a number of years? That way, if you're really good at this and you sell 100,000 or 500,000 cars, or you're bad at it, it doesn't hurt you in that way. Because otherwise, my fear is all these cars go right back to making gas cars if their EV prices come back up after a year of success and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. Before we get to Mark, got to remember Tesla's mission statement, which is to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable technology. Sustainable energy, I mean. If a certain style of this incentive goes in, here's a company that's already killing it without an incentive. It's going to launch Tesla even further ahead of everybody else.
Yeah.
Which is kind of going against their mission statement. The whole idea is to get more companies to come along. It's not meant to be Tesla makes every car. There's diversity that's needed. So this has to be carefully crafted. And to get to Mark, what he said was, let me put it up on the screen really quick. So from Cybertruck, I'm going to go for the $25,000 tax credit. $25,000 tax credit for trucks and SUVs over 6,000 pounds. It's been around for decades. There's no cap on it, and no one bats an eye at it.
Is that really?
Is that real?
Mark, you and I need to talk, my friend.
Yeah.
In about a year's time when my Cybertruck reservation comes up.
I had no idea.
That's cool. I didn't know about that either. Mark, if you'd be so kind, send a little link or something to it, or reach out to us after the show. We can talk about it later on. But that's fantastically cool. Wow.
So do we want to jump to the last story?
Yeah. So next up, we are talking about how Mary Barra, who is the CEO of General Motors, is trying to build, you've probably heard Tesla is not a car company. Like people have this idea that Tesla is just so much more than that. And I think their investors, their board of directors is putting pressure on them to start thinking in the same terms. So they have this kind of cool incubator that they run where they open up ideas. One such concrete example of a success from that incubator is BrightDrop, which we talked about maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago, which is this really cool electric vehicle van company that'll use the Ultium battery stack. It'll use the platforms that they've already established to build like parcel trucks like for FedEx, right? And this is going to be one of those cool things that helps General Motors to branch out and be more than a car company. Because I think that's a deep desire that they have. Thank you, Eric Kessler, for the super chat. As always, you're a huge fan. We appreciate you very much. So the thing though is, to me, this seemed a little bit kind of pie in the sky or kind of abstract because it seems like the right buzzwords. Like if you're a Silicon Valley, anybody from Silicon Valley probably can relate to this, but it has all the right corporate buzzwords to make it sound like you're doing some cool stuff. And there's a bunch of dudes with like cafe lattes and talking about philosophy and stuff. But at the end of the day, is there really concrete stuff happening? That's what I'm hoping to hear more about. BrightDrop was one example. They mentioned in particular some of the self-driving tech, which I think they're investing in, as we know, and also like insurance, which again sounds like Tesla.
Yeah.
It's like you're gonna get into insurance. You've been building cars for 100 years. Why now suddenly? And it's probably related to Super Cruise and the interest of, of Cruise eventually becoming a service like Waymo. But
Yep.
there's generally a sense that companies want to be more than a car company, because the reality is a car company is kind of a terrible business model. It really is.
Yes.
You trade at a really low price to earnings multiple. The reason is it's very capital intensive. If you make 100,000 cars this year and it costs you $1 billion to build a plant, if you want to go and double your you got to go and build another $1 billion factory. Compare that to like Facebook, which has like, I'm making this number up here, like 20,000 employees and makes billions of dollars a year. Like the number of dollars per employee of software companies is just absurd. And that's why software people get paid a lot of money, is because their end product that they build can just scale to, if you have 10 downloads or 100 downloads, it doesn't change all that much. There is some cost at scale. So General Motors, I think, is on a hunt to get that stock price up. They're like, look, if Tesla's doing this and they're trading at $700 a share, why shouldn't we? We're doing some cool stuff too. But I want to see more. BrightDrop was a great first example. I kind of want to see more concrete examples of what are you doing. Give me an example of an incubator company that you brought in and has shown some positivity.
Yeah, it's this. I keep saying to you every week when we talk about GM, is they're one of the companies that's getting me the most excited for EVs right now. And part of the reason is like, you got Tesla, which was doing something nobody had ever done before. So they came up from nothing and built up what they wanted to be, tip of the spear for electrification, doing it from the ground up, brand new. So they're writing their own playbook. And then everybody else is an established player. And so the question is, who's going to write the playbook for how you transition from the old school way of doing things to the new way? What I love about everything that's coming about GM, it looks like they're really just aping everything that Tesla is doing. And every time they do that, I'm like, go, keep going, just keep doing that. It's like, I'm glad they're going into insurance. And I think what part of it was OnStar, because they have the OnStar service and they have, what was the other one that you just brought up? It was the Super Cruise. So between Super Cruise and OnStar, they have data for how people are driving to be able to give insurance rates, which is exactly what Tesla's going to be doing with their insurance product. And so it's like they also have Super Cruise, which they're actually going to be licensing out to other companies. So they're going to have autonomy, just like Tesla has full self-driving. They're basically just kind of replicating all these software as a service packages, but they're even going beyond what Tesla's doing because they're going into deliveries. Like the BrightDrop stuff is not to be shrugged off. I mean, they're building not just the hardware infrastructure for FedEx, they're building the software infrastructure and the fleet management systems, the software to manage all of that, which is really, that could turn into a very lucrative business on its own. So they're definitely trying to find ways to make their company more valuable than just manufacturing the hardware. And it's so smart. And if you look at what they're doing, I think they are showing that they are delivering on some of these things. Because I mean, Super Cruise is a real thing. It's out there and they're improving upon it. BrightDrop still has to be kind of proven because it's just starting to roll out. But they're making, the story that we're going to be talking about next is kind of leads into that if we want to go to that story. But it's like they're doing things right now that are showing me signs of life, that they're not just giving us platitudes and not following up on it. There are actual actions that they're doing that are showing that they're following up on some of what they're promising.
That's fair. I think I'd agree with that. Here's a secret that I'm going to tell GM that, I would rather have them like pay us as consulting fees or something for this. But, one thing Lucid did that no one talked about, and I don't even think Lucid's really I don't know what they've done since the appointment, the presentation, is the ESS, the energy storage system, a home battery. Tesla currently is one of the big players that are doing this, but if you have mastery in that space, like the Ultium battery, it's a pouch battery. It's a longer cell, long and thin. So I'm not sure I think they could probably make it work. They should probably use a different chemistry to make it cheaper, lithium iron phosphate. But GM, the first thing you should do before some of these cars, and I'm not sure why they're so far in the future, like that GM SUV, is 2023 or 2024. Why is that?
Yeah.
You have the plants, you have all of this stuff. Like, let's go. Get that car out here next year. Why isn't it like early 2022? That kind of bugs me a little bit. But before even that, get a home battery solution. And General Motors is not a good name to put on a battery pack. So I really think GM needs a general branding update, because General Motors it just sounds like such a 1950s company. So whatever they come up with or whatever they do, build a home battery. Make them like 8 to 15 or 20. Make them different size classes, and get in the industry and just start pumping out home battery solutions. I think every EV maker should be doing that as a low-cost way to start bringing in revenue before your cars are ready. Like Lucid. Let's say it's going to be another year before they deliver on their car. Well, start building these and start bringing in revenue from this. I bet you they will sell as many as they make. And that goes for anybody making home batteries. That's just my take.
But it depends if they have the battery supply. Because we should probably move to the next story, because I don't think they have the battery supply to do that. This next story, I think, is... Do you want to go to the next one?
Yeah.
All right. Do you have it up?
Yeah, I think I have it up here. So GM offers some clues as to how they're going to bring the battery cost down. You know, to your point about copying Tesla, Volkswagen had a battery power day where they kind of showed off the same sort of approach of how we're going to bring down prices. Clearly, this is going to be very important. One thing I highlighted is, again, a page out of Tesla's playbook. You build a factory, you allow a established player to come in and run the production line inside of your factory, and you can bring down some costs. And General Motors is going to be working with Korean company LG Energy Solutions. I think they're kind of spinning it off from LG, the larger conglomerate. And they're expecting to be producing Ultium battery cells in Lordstown, Ohio plant in 2022. So that's coming up next year. And unlike Tesla's doing, because they're using this Ultium battery pack, which is very proprietary for GM, I actually don't think, I think all the batteries will be used just for GM. And what's weird is, like, LG Chem couldn't just take what they've learned and use it elsewhere. Because like Panasonic makes 2170s not for Tesla, by the way. People don't realize that. But I'm not sure if the same will be true here. But yeah, they're laying out a plan how they're going to get to $100 per kilowatt hour by 2025. Again, that sounds like far too far in the future. But Matt, what's your take? What are some of the cues that you're going off of to give you optimism for their plan?
Well, they've already been building their first gigafactory for battery production. And this story talks about how they're going to be building a second one in Tennessee. So it's like they're now going to have 2 battery factories pumping out batteries. And that they need this because their goal is by 2025, GM wants to be selling 1 million EVs a year. So I think part of the reason for the delay isn't necessarily because they can't build the car. I think their biggest limitation right now is the batteries. I think they're trying to get that scaled up right now so they can hit that million per year in 2025. So they're think about how long it took Tesla to get where they are, to be able to, they still haven't passed that milestone. They're about to, but look how long it took them to do that. And basically GM's talking about doing that between now and 4 years from now. They're going to be at that. That's a pretty accelerated pace.
Yeah, I mean, Tesla didn't even have enough engineers or employees, didn't have any factory. I mean, they were starting, I mean, GM already has like 100 factories around the world. So hopefully they can do it quickly.
But not battery factories. It's like, there's going to be, like, even Elon has talked about how there's going to be a run on nickel. There's going to be a run on these, just the parts to make the batteries. There's going to be this mad crush of just demand for all of these materials over the next few years. So everybody is not just competing on building a car. They're competing on the raw materials needed to make the batteries to put in the cars. So I think that's what I'm seeing signs of life in GM for, is like they clearly are looking at what they have to do for batteries now to lay the groundwork so that they have the supply they need.
You start to see the grave that Honda and Toyota are digging for themselves.
Yeah, I know.
Very quickly.
It makes me so sad.
I know. So Tesla sold 500,000 last year, with Giga Austin, Giga Berlin coming online, and really Model Y in Shanghai. I think 1 million this year is even doable. So as
Yes.
crazy as that sounds,
Yes.
if not next year for sure.
Yes.
So Tesla, little Tesla is going to beat them to it. And 1 million cars a year by 2025, 1 million EVs. It almost doesn't sound ambitious enough for GM, but I guess from where they are now, it's still a great, positive uptick. But it'll be interesting to see how other companies then match that rate. To your point, everybody, the viewers, everybody out there should be realizing this is why companies aren't more into EVs, because you can't just build a factory to build your car like it used to be. Now you have to build 2 factories. You got to build the factory for the car, and you got to build a factory for the batteries. And if you've been making money making 1 factory, why would you want to make money making 2 factories? That's kind of where Honda and Toyota and some of these companies are. But batteries are going to be critical in the next 10 years. And I think you and I both are planning videos. There's a lot of conversations about recycling batteries. I had an interview today with the company, with the CTO of Li-Cycle, which is a really cool, new, promising upstart. We'll talk more about that in an episode maybe 2 weeks from now. But recycling will be key, because as these cars come to end of life, we can't just be throwing them away like we do batteries of yore. We got to be more full, closed loop with this. Otherwise, there's really no hope, because, like you said, there's going to be a run on every one of these elements, and we're going to have to even get clever about how we do some of that stuff. You've had some videos talking about, salt batteries and some other different technologies. We're going to have to get clever about all of it.
Mm-hmm. Battery recycling is key. Without it, it's a closed loop system where you can kind of just keep the same materials going through. It's going to drop costs, so it's going to be a benefit cost-wise. And then it's less materials you have to pull out of the ground, so it's going to make things doable. So companies like Li-Cycle and American Manganese, there's all these different companies, Redwood Materials. It's like they're all this mad dash into battery recycling for a very good reason.
Yeah, exactly. And we can probably jump into the comments now. You want to?
Yeah. So now we're transitioning. That's the last story. We're going to transition into the Q&A portion of the show. So now we're going to go through and kind of catch up on some of the comments and chime in.
I have no idea how this happened, but it's already 5:50 as well. So that I didn't think those stories were going to take as long as they did, but
that took us a long time. We also started twice.
Yeah, that's true.
We started a little late.
So Jim Pate says the only truth of recycle is reuse. So the video that I'm planning, I actually talked to 2 companies. One is a company that reuses batteries, which is always the best approach. And this gentleman runs a company where he'll take old Leaf and old Tesla batteries that have been, from cars that have been totaled, and he'll put them into RVs and off-grid settings, which is really, really cool. Matt has a video of one of his friends that have done something similar. But recycling of batteries, unlike other stuff, like there's no incentive to recycle plastic, because plastic is so cheap. It's like dirt cheap. So there's no incentive structure. Like there's no cost structure in place for it. But that will not be the case for nickel and manganese and lithium in about 5 or 10 years. I think you're going to be shocked at how much recycling is going to play into it. And I've always said economics are going to be the driving force. The incentives have to be in place, and it's going to be a cost question. And recycling will be there. Thank you, Bung Hollywood, for the super chat. We appreciate you.
Like, what happened in the beginning? Why the better not be a home power issue, as both of you guys have power walls and solar panels? I'm not sure what happened in the beginning. The software that we used to do the live stream, it just like crashed and restarted on me. So suddenly the live stream just stopped.
I will say we are at 300 viewers right now, which I think is a record. I'll check with my wife. Yeah. She keeps the track of that. But the like button ratio is oddly low for such a handsome and beautiful group of viewers. I think
yes, Eric.
Easily.
Yes, Eric. Smash the like button.
Smash, yeah. I wonder who was the YouTuber who first coined smash that like button? But everyone says that now. Yes. Yeah.
Peter McKinnon? I don't know.
Maybe. So James Paul has a good point. He says plastic recycling may have more incentive when the oil production is reduced. Very good point. I've actually had an entire conversation with Dusty Green, who's in the conversation about this, and he has some theories about like what happens to a lot of things. Like we use petroleum in like pharmaceuticals and a lot of little things that you don't think of every day, and so it's interesting. And while I'm talking about Dusty, I want to give Dusty a special shout out. I don't know if I told you this or not, Matt. So Dusty had inroads with Sandy Monroe, and thank you, Dusty, for hooking us up. We're going to do an interview later in the month with Sandy Monroe. I emailed him directly, and I didn't hear from him for a while, but thank you, Dusty. We appreciate you. But we'll have a little chat with Dusty with Sandy about the GigaPress and pros and cons and why nobody else is doing it. That's kind of the premise.
Oh, the that $25,000 rebate is for businesses that put vehicles over 6,000 pounds into service. Section 179
I have a business.
tax deduction. Yeah.
You have a business.
I'm going to buy a Cybertruck for my business.
Yes, because that filming gear, working from home, is heavy.
Yes. Man, that's insane. That's a lot.
Jim says, I don't know about this. He says, Jim Bates says, time to shout out a scream that more cobalt is used in oil refining than for batteries. I didn't even know about that. I'd have to look into that. Interesting. Yeah, I do love that all these the people who drive gas cars become such environmentalists when they talk about battery supply chains. I think,
Yes.
we're hurting the planet. Like, okay, where was that 2 years ago?
Yes.
Eric Stark says, "You both have great channels. Thank you for doing this channel." Thank you, Eric. We appreciate you, really do.
Yeah, this is a fun little outlet for us to talk about more topical conversations where we don't typically do that on our channels. It's a lot of fun.
Exactly. Any questions pop out at you?
Looking.
Dario Palmerio says, it's got to be Graham Stephan about smashing the like button. He definitely comes to mind. He is the greatest purveyor of that. Thank you, Hugh Waller, for your super chat. We appreciate you. Greetings in Canada. I wonder if things are getting warmer there now. I wonder, when does it start getting warmer in Canada? I'm curious. Oh, this is a good question for you, Maddie. Did you put one up there? Okay. Here's a good question for you. Do you guys have any opinions on liquid metal batteries for energy storage? Because Mr. Farrell has a video on his channel, so anybody who hasn't seen it yet, he's done a really good deep dive on this. What's your take?
I haven't done it specifically on liquid metal batteries, but I'm still digging into this myself.
Really? I thought you had one on liquid metal batteries.
No,
okay.
I've done salt, I've done solid state, I've done flow, I've done a lot of different battery topics.
Liquid air. Yeah, you had a couple
yes,
others.
I haven't done liquid metal though yet.
Okay. All right.
It's on my agenda. I'm looking into it now, actually. It's pretty cool. It's pretty neat, but I can't really talk to it too much yet.
Gotcha. Dan Caro says 18 centigrade today in Saskatchewan. That sounds like it's warming up. Yeah, Bong Hollywood says it's blazing hot in San Diego. Today was a warm day. It was probably like 75 degrees for most of the day. Anyone into battery stuff, look at the Limiting Factor channel. Limiting Factor is fantastic. He does really, grab yourself a drink, take a seat, and sit down. His videos are on the longer side.
Get out your notebook.
Yes, but they're fantastic.
He's like the ultimate source for battery knowledge if you want to watch any channel.
Absolutely.
Eric just asked, Matt, have you done a video on VR and AR? It's like, no, not yet. I would love to, but I have not yet.
Yeah, here's a little straw poll. If either of us did a video on VR and AR, which is a little different than the stuff we normally do. Would you guys watch that? Would that be interesting? Should we consider topics like that more in the tech world than in the energy world? I'm curious. FamNaf says, why wouldn't the Model Y, as costs of batteries and structure are reduced, be a good robo-taxi? I'm not sure if anyone has said they wouldn't be. They'd be pretty good for a robo-taxi. I still think you could probably build a more like purpose-built car for that. Like, imagine one of these cars that have more room or the seating kind of facing inward so people can talk to each other, or I've mentioned in the past like pods where everybody can have their own little individual private space. But the Model Y I think would be a great choice because they're widely available today. They're not just some theoretical pie-in-the-sky EV. They're here today with FSD, and if that tech ever gets finalized, or when it does, it would make sense.
I agree completely. There's no reason why they couldn't, but I could see a purpose-built car being cheaper to produce and buy. Thanks for the super chat. Monarch said, thank you for this show, guys. Matt, waiting to see your series on smart home setup when you move into your new house. That's going to be a ways down the road. But yeah, if it happens, I'm going to go a little nuts. I'll tell you that right now.
Go full, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Smart everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Because when you're starting from scratch, you can do whatever you want. And I've got plans. Yeah. I got plans.
Oh, are you thinking about having a house built? Like,
yes.
Blueprint? Wow, that's the dream. I want to do that.
Don't know if it's going to happen yet. It's still early. It's like, you don't tell people you're about to have a baby until it's too soon. Well, I've already told people I'm doing this too soon, but it's still in the works. $3D printed homes. I just brought this up because it's funny because I'm actually looking into 3D printed homes right now. I don't know if you've looked into it, Ricky. 3D printed homes are fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
3D printed anything, I think, is fascinating.
I know. But just imagine printing a house, like a 2,000 square foot home that's been 3D printed.
So how big is this machine? How big is the printer bed and arms? And
they print it on location. It's basically a machine that they bring out and set up on location. And it basically has like this big printer head that's basically just shooting out a special mix of like cement or whatever they're making it out of. And it just like goes around in the shape and basically prints the walls just from the ground up. It's trippy. It is really, really trippy. It's really cool.
All right, alas, it's already 6:01 and we haven't hit 200 likes. We were so close, guys. There's always next week, though.
Well, Dan did bring up 100 more likes and Matt gets his new house.
There you go.
If only I could pay for my house with likes.
And Matt Farrell will shave his head.
Nice.
Come on. Somebody asked, Heelcan Jim says, what's your favorite e-bike? You've actually driven a couple, haven't you?
Yeah, I own a rad power bike. I absolutely love it. It's fantastic.
Yeah. What is, like, quick rundown, like how many miles can you go? Or
you can go maybe 25 to 30 miles on it before you need to charge it, which is way more than you need. It's built like the one I have is built like a tank. It's like, it's heavy, but because it's battery powered, it doesn't feel like it's heavy when you're biking it. It's fantastic. I love it.
I've been talking with a company. It's Harley Davidson's building an e-bike. The name of the model eludes me now, but another company that I'm really impressed with how they're approaching Serial One is what they're calling it. Is Harley Davidson. If you remember, they had in Long Way Up, they provided the motorcycles, and they, for an old like tradition-based company, they've got some vision and some look to the future. I'm actually pretty bullish on the future of Harley. I think they'll have a similar image problem where their traditional fans might not even really want electric stuff. Yeah. And young people aren't really hip to Harley. So there's that disconnect, the same problem GM has, but I think they're going to do some pretty cool stuff. Thank you, Leland, for your super chat.
Do you pay the price of full self-driving on the Cybertruck when you pre-order, or when you pay the price of full self-driving once it comes out? It's when it comes out. That's what you'll be paying. I wish it was for when you put the deposit down, but it's not.
Really?
Yeah. So whatever the price of full self-driving is when the Cybertruck goes on sale is what we'll be paying if you want full self-driving.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it makes sense because I mean you're putting a deposit. Why not just say yes even if you don't mean it, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sticking to my guns. No FSD for me, baby. None. I'm not paying for it anywhere. I'll have my Cybertruck and I'll drive it myself, or I can't wait for my kids to get older, Matt. You know, I'm just like, you drive and I'll sit in the back. But
there's your full self-driving.
The subscription. I wonder if they'll even sell FSD in a year when the Cybertruck comes out, if it's subscription only at that point.
I think it's gonna be so expensive you wouldn't want to buy it. So it's gonna be your only option will probably be to subscribe to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're kind of at time now.
Yeah. Yeah. This one went by really quickly. I honestly did not think our story load would take up as much time as it did, but yeah. Sorry if we cut into the Q&A part this week around, but you know where we will be next week.
Yep. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss an episode. We're live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And you can always listen to the podcast version of the show at viceversa.show. And always, as always, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.